This is Andy Goldsweig from the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and I'm here today with Davide Capodanno from the University of Catania and Matt Daniels from Manchester University. We're here today on behalf of CCI and SCAI to talk about social media for the dissemination of research. Let me introduce Davide to kick it off and tell us a little bit about the use of social media to disseminate research.
Thank you. So I believe there are benefits for interventional cardiologists in particular when it deals with social media presence, because especially nowadays that we have so many journals in cardiovascular medicine, by Scopus we know that there are even more than 350. So you can imagine that each week you have about 1,000 papers in cardiovascular medicine. It's very difficult for physicians to keep the pace of all the research that is published. So one of the benefits of social media and Twitter in particular is that you have this information about new papers that are published. This information is very brief, typically in the form of 280 characters. So you have really a short sentence that give you the awareness that this new article on this topic is existing. Then if you are more interested, of course, you will follow the link and you get the information that you want. But this is a kind of filtering all the information that we have, which is very useful. And the other thing is that the social media have algorithms that in a way promote this content. So if people start to like this content, to engage with them, these contents are promoted. So in a way, it's like a kind of post-publishing peer review, because it's like that you get the information that most people are talking about. And I think this is another useful function of social media. Of course, then there is all the story that you can get the criticism and critical appraisal of these studies after they are published, and the conversation is always very insightful and inspiring. So there are at least 2 or 3 good reasons why social media are particularly good in this kind of approach to medical literature.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's ask Matt to tell us a little bit about assessment of the uptake of information by social media.
Okay, thanks, Andy. So that was a really great introduction. So one of the challenges, I think, is when you've got some new material emerging, how do you try and capture the uptake and the utility of a particular piece? And this is what this score, the Altmetrics score, tries to do. So that's crudely a number in a colored wheel, but what it tries to do is aggregate all of the different social media platforms and standard media platforms to give a representation of how something is being actively used from the moment it's released. And that makes it different to a standard citation that would come in peer-reviewed work, often many years later. We know from work done by the ESC Media Committee that if you randomize articles to Twitter or not, you can boost both the Altmetrics score, but ultimately the citation score. And that piece of work hopefully will conclude in March 2021, and we'll see the major impact of that. But interventional cardiologists love metrics, and they love boosting metrics any way they can. And this Altmetrics score is something that you can actually interact with. And as you see here, the single biggest component of the Altmetrics score itself is driven by tweets. So retweeting an article with the DOI is an important part of the kind of the post-publication promotion or engagement, and it's one of the things which is heavily influenced in the Altmetrics score itself, and ultimately something that comes on to influence the final citation of the particular article. And that's obviously relevant for people whose promotions depend on H indices, or for journals whose impact factors are dependent on the 2-year citation number. It's kind of interesting to think, I mean, Davide, you're heavily engaged with Eurointervention. You know, how accurate, how reliable do you think the Altmetrics score is? Because 25, you know, an Altmetrics score of 25 puts you in the top 5%. How often do you find the top 5% become the most cited? What's your experience been with that so far?
You know, you have seen, you have shown very nicely this ribbon, which is called the donuts. When I see it blue, it means the dimensions comes from Twitter and Facebook, and are very reliable because these are people, readers like us today. But when you see the red, these are press release, news outlets, etc. I always have the feeling that this score is very sensitive to this kind of other sources of information. So in a way, I would not say it's easy to cheat, but it's very sensitive to how many news outlets are promoting that content. So you're right, it's easy to have a high Altmetrics score if you know the rules of the game. And of course, this makes this metric a little bit less reliable when you see a lot of other sources other than normal people that cite it. So I don't know in the end, but being in the top quartile is not difficult if you know the rules of the game. So that makes it a little bit more difficult.
I've seen that universities on homepages often will have their faculty with the recent publications, and increasingly the Altmetrics score is kind of visually appealing, but it features on those pages. My current institution doesn't, my previous institution did. Andy, how does Nebraska kind of try and represent faculty outputs? Have you kind of caught onto this yet?
The University of Nebraska has been very eager to incorporate data like this. The Altmetrics score certainly is something that shows up next to articles that are associated with faculty members at the university. In addition, the university subscribes to probably expensive online tools that show our international networking, that creates maps of the world with little lines connecting us to people like each other, showing how our research output and co-authors are spread around the world to in some way demonstrate the reach or impact of our networks. So I think increasingly data to assess the dissemination of information are becoming complex and more utilized. It's not just about a single number at this point for a journal looking at its own impact factor. There are a lot of other metrics that go into this and that are becoming popular. I should point out this Altmetrics score that we're looking at here in the background on this slide is the Altmetrics score for the initial publication of the SCAI shock classification, which has the top Altmetrics score for CCI in the last couple of years. I think I should also point out, since interventional cardiologists really are data-driven people and in general focus on outcomes data, that there are analytic tools built into social media platforms, and these are particularly appealing to our way of thinking because they apply a data-driven methodology to deliver outcomes data about our own publication and posting. So users can determine their whole accounts, viewership and engagement over a period. They can also get that information in a very granular form for the distribution and reception of each individual post on Facebook or tweet on Twitter with just a few mouse clicks. So what you see on the screen here, this shows a month worth of data from Twitter from CCI. The @CCI journal account had an engagement rate of 4.3% on an average day, earning 79 link clicks, 309 retweets without comments, and 722 likes. For an individual tweet, at the very granular level, this particular tweet showed up on people's screens 18,531 times, 2,208 of them engaged with the tweet in some way, clicking on it, following a hashtag, following a link. These data can be utilized by individuals and by journals to optimize their reception. You can see when you tweet, what sorts of tweets, what pictures, videos, individuals you tag result in the highest number of impressions and engagements, and alter behavior accordingly to maximize your online impact. So let me ask you two, both Matt and Davide, you are certainly social media influencers. Do you look at your own accounts, Twitter or Facebook data periodically and see what the trends are, what individual tweets are most successful?
Matthew, please. More influential than me.
I mean, look, when I read this, these words, you earned retweets and clicks. I mean, this is like a game, right? This is almost saying that what you put out is something that you can do better, and you can bring more traffic in your direction. I always like, you know, if I put something out and people like it, you kind of feel that that's a positive step. My question about this kind of level of granularity is, you know, the utility of it, because I'm not sure that I can easily work out, you know, what makes a post more likable. And, you know, I've never had one that's gone into thousands and thousands of likes or retweets or something crazy like that. But I think what it does tell you is a bit more information about the way your content is being accessed in a way that the traditional print media just, you know, you wouldn't know. It would be a magazine that would sit on the shelf and people may from time to time look at it. This, I think, tells you a lot more about how relevant the material you've got continues to be, and I think that's useful. The open access articles, and, you know, this is a controversial topic for some, but I think open access really works incredibly well with social media. It's incredibly frustrating when you click on a link to an article and it sits behind a paywall. And now with so much choice and so much stuff out there, it's almost counterproductive to put articles behind paywalls, because people can just access a similar type of content from a different platform without the same sort of hassle. So I don't know, David, how do you use these sorts of numbers? You know, if you look at a whole journal type approach, how do you make use of this? Do you have a team of people who work on this behind the scenes to try and get the most out of it?
We have a social media team that actively look at this granular data, as you have said. I think for a journal, what is important is this number of engagement. Because engagements on Twitter, for example, means that people clicked on a link, they expanded the figure, something like that. So they interacted in a way with your tweet. And when you see that there is no engagement, this is a bad sign, because it means that the contents that you are trying to promote and push are not really appreciated in a way that the reader, the viewer, likes to interact with the tweet, enter the post and look at the paper, which is at the end of the day what we want. So I didn't realize that there are so many numbers to look at, but we have a team that is doing that regularly, and they can rank our papers and see what is the most more successful or not based on engagement in particular. And impression, of course, is the other part of the story, because if you can reach 15,000 people, this is, of course, means a lot.
What about if you've got an article, you think it's a good article, it's gone through peer review, it's got great comments, but you put it out on Twitter and it has zero engagement? Have you tried to retweet that in a different way to sort of pick that up?
Yeah, there is no doubt that the way you construct your tweet will be key to the success of that engagement. So if you don't put a figure, for example, a picture, people will not react, even if you write something very academic regarding that paper. So we have proof that the way we build the tweet will be key to the success of that content.
We can self-referentially plug David Cohen and Herb Aronow, who recorded Top 10 Tips for High Impact Social Media, which is a video in this same series, talking about including figures, as Davide said, as well as tagging individuals, whether co-authors or experts, the time of day when tweets are sent. So a shameless plug that if you like this content, check out that video. I'd like to thank both of you for joining today. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget that CCI and SCAI are active on social media. On Twitter, please follow @CCI Journal and @SCAI. Follow both organizations on Facebook as well. Look forward to seeing you soon online.